recommended news. It's a seal that can sing Star Wars. Search on this topic. Read full article.
Oh, you have to. Oh, I should probably mute my Cortana speaker because we're going to be talking about it today. Give me a sec.
Oh, yeah, let me close my door here. Let's cool down.
Hi, everyone. We'll be starting in just a minute. Yes, we're just getting all set up and letting the stragglers come in. I should also make sure our YouTube streams are working on both ends. YouTube is live. Mixer is coming live now. Fantastic. It appears we're live.
It appears I'm not orange. All right. Nice work there, Zach.
Thanks. That's all me and not the auto brightness.
I did upgrade the firmware on my Brio this week, so that might also have something to do with it.
Nice. If only those firmwares were delivered by Windows Update.
Yeah. It also stinks. It's starting to wreak havoc again with the Studio and Windows Hello.
Is it?
Yeah,
mine's okay on the Studio One.
It was until like 3 days ago when it decided to start taking over, and then it takes over and doesn't work. So it's like really annoying.
Some say light orange this week. That's a first. It's because my light's not.
You get a tan.
If I shine my light directly on me, it makes me look. It gives me bad shadows, so I like to face it against the wall. There we go. That'll have to do.
I'm sending out the tweet. Did not name you, so sorry.
Okay. There it is. I'll just retweet it from the follow. There we go. Join us for the Windows Central live podcast right now on Mixer or YouTube. Why'd you put Mixer first? Mixer sucks. I'm joking. Mixer's great. I'm sorry, Mixer.
Well, no comment.
If you're listening on Mixer, you are the true ones, as the kids might say. You are the true ones. Hey guys, hope you're both doing well. Thank you. Smiley face. Hope you're doing well as well. We'll be answering questions at the end of the show if you have any. But right now we need to get started. Let me test my recording. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. All right, I'm ready to go when you are, Dan.
2 more seconds. I'm arguing. Talking about Evangelion on Twitter. This is super important.
Really?
I just got to give someone a link.
Okay.
Almost there.
All right, I just turned Dan's volume down. How's that? Are we about even now?
Am I even? I'll try not to yell too much.
No, it's not. I don't know why it is. It's because
testing.
Expert likes to boost your audio for some reason.
I think that worked. I didn't even set up.
Testing the mic by naming Microsoft code names. That's a good idea. I'll start doing that.
This is 138.
138. Yep. We've done 138 of these.
Too many. So let's quit.
Last episode today.
Oh, you did? Oh, there we go. Okay, boom. All right, I am ready to go. Recording.
I am now recording.
In 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 138 for June 21st, 2019. Hey everyone, Dan Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast, where we talk all things Microsoft, Surface, Windows 10, Xbox, and whatever we feel like talking about. And we also take some questions from you guys in the audience, at least at the end of the podcast. Today we're going to talk about 19H2, which is a code word for basically the next version of Windows 10, which is, we don't know where it is, right?
Yeah, it's lost right now. We're just waiting for Microsoft to talk about it.
Yeah, so this is supposed to go live in the fall. and which means insiders should be testing it right now, and we should be complaining about how there's nothing new in it because it's expected just to be a kind of a cumulative update. But we're not even doing that. So Zach's going to talk a little bit about the current situation there and what's going on. Also, Cortana, it's still not dead. In fact, there's been some movement there. We've been talking about for almost 2 years now, Zach, a year and a half. You discovered this, that they were going to switch Cortana to a more conversational style with a focus on keyboard entry. Yep. And it turns out you weren't lying. And we're getting the first glimpses of that now. In fact, there's a way you can kind of turn that on. But yes, and we'll also talk a little bit more about the structure of Cortana here and how it's been changing and kind of what they've been doing. It seems to basically back up what we've been anticipating that they were doing with Cortana, which is appifying it or modular. I can't speak today. Forget it. We're also going to talk about Xbox, Anaconda, and Lockhart. Those are not punk band names. They are code names for the new Xbox. And the rumor was there was 2 of them, but as they like to say in the Highlander series, there can only be one. And we're going to talk about the status of that. Finally, iPad OS. A few weeks back, Apple had its big event, and it was funny. Zach and I, we did the podcast. It was only when we were doing questions and comments after the podcast, we're like, oh, we forgot to talk about the whole Apple event thing. And so I've been coming back to it. I did an Ask Dan episode this week where I talked about iPad OS and how I do actually view it as sort of a potential threat to Microsoft and the Surface line. And we'll pontificate and explain what we mean there. Of course, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably already flipping a table saying, oh my God, no way. Surface Pro is completely different. But yeah. I'm actually talking about the regular people out there, not people who listen to this podcast. So anyway, Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
You know, I'm not too bad. The weather's been quite nice this week. It's lifted my spirits a little bit. How are you?
Hanging in there. Yeah, it's just one of those weeks. I've been successful in some areas, unsuccessful in others, but I've been sleeping well. So that's
great. Well done.
Yeah, that's all I can really say. But it's been an exciting week. Shout out before we get started. I'm going to do it, Zach. Evangelion is now on Netflix. Started today, June 21st. I'm a huge fan of this anime. If you never watch anime and you're like, oh my God, I don't watch kids' cartoons, all this stuff, go check it out on Netflix. It's an awesome series. It's one of the most popular and successful anime series ever in the history of Japan. It's so big, and I want to go to Japan for this. There's now an Evangelion-themed restaurant and I believe a bar too. But in the restaurant, they have like food that's like based on the show. Like it's that big. It's in theme parks and it's just like this huge thing. Anyway, it's been very hard to access this. And if you're in the United States or outside of Japan, you have to basically buy it on DVD and stuff. But Netflix is streaming it now. And they did switch voice actors, which is whatever. But go watch it and go watch the 2 movies that follow it. It's awesome. I feel like I should almost do like a live watching blog thing about it. But and Zach, go watch it too. I know you're not big into this stuff.
I'm really not.
I know, but give it a go. It's not big robots. It's so messed up and it's so crazy and deep, and it's really about the world's crappiest father. That's really what it's about. But I'm telling you, it's amazing. It's awesome. If you've never watched anime, just go watch that one. Evangelion, Netflix. All right, let's get started on 19H2. Okay, Zach, tell us, what's the deal with 19H2? Why don't I have it?
What is the deal? That is the question. So 19H2, for those who don't know, is kind of a weird update this year, and it shouldn't be because Microsoft has committed to 2 updates a year, and they're usually pretty good at delivering that. At least they have been in the last year or so. But with 19H2, things are a little bit different, primarily because Microsoft is actually more focused on 20H1, which is the release coming after 19H2 in the spring of next year. So that's already weird as it is. 20H1 is this is the first Windows 10 feature update to get almost a year of testing and development compared to the usual 6 months. So 19H2 is sort of stuck in the middle between 19H1 and 20H1, where there is supposed to be a fall update this year, but Microsoft's efforts are mostly focused on 20H1. And the reasons for this is stuff we've talked about before. It's actually kind of a really boring story. It's all to do with platform work. Essentially, 20H1's platform work is more important. They're putting more stuff into it. So 19H2's platform work, which would have originally been completed this month, isn't happening now. So 19H2's platform work is going to be based on the platform work completed with 19H1, which happened in December 2018. So what essentially is happening here is 19H2 is going to be treated as more like a service pack to 19H1. Now, I don't think Microsoft will ever use the word service pack here. As far I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to play this off as a normal feature update, but on a technical level, it's not another feature update. It's essentially just a sort of roll-up update that has maybe a couple of minor new features specific to the enterprise, mostly bug fixes, performance improvements, stability improvements, all those sort of minor under-the-hood changes. Maybe some sort of UI tweaks here and there to make things more consistent. But overall, it'll be a very minor update that will be delivered via Windows Update as like a cumulative update. I don't believe it will rev the build number in any major way. The minor build number will obviously revise, but the major one I think will still stick as whatever what's the RTM build for 19H1? It's 18362. I think the build number for 19H2 will still be 18362, but the .xxx will change. Could be wrong on that. They might rev it once like the old service packs did in the old days. But yeah, it's not going to be a major feature update. So why are we not testing it yet? Microsoft said that they were planning to begin testing and talking more about 19H2 in the spring. Today, June 21st marks the beginning of summer, so Microsoft is now officially behind schedule with its initial plans for 19H2. And I don't think there's any sort of problem as to why. There's no like serious reason. I think it's just because they haven't got their messaging sorted yet. They haven't got the blog post. They haven't got the systems in the back end to flight these sort of cumulative updates to the release preview and slow rings just yet, all sorted. I think that's it. There's no like, oh, 19H2 has a major problem that, you know, they can't get it out to testing just yet. I really don't think that's the case. So it's not a huge deal that insiders aren't testing it yet because it's such a small update. It will essentially be, if you remember using Windows 8.1, Microsoft released Windows 8.1 Update 1 and Update 2. Update 1 had a couple of notable things in it, behavior changes and whatnot, but Update 2 sort of didn't. I'm more expecting 19H2 to be like a Windows 8.1 Update 2 style update, which essentially just downloaded through Windows Update like a normal monthly roll-up and applied to the system. It wasn't like a full build download and you know, installing update 1% too. It wasn't like that. So that's what I'm thinking 19H2 is going to be. Now, the reason they're doing a 19H2 update, because I've seen people online go, well, if that's the case, why are they even doing one? Why don't they just roll out a normal monthly update in October and be done with it? And the reason is support, support schedules for Windows 10. So businesses, and this is all to do with businesses, of course, but businesses running Windows 10 usually like to upgrade to the fall release of Windows 10 every year because that version is supported for 30 months compared to the spring release, which is only supported for 18 months. So if Microsoft were to say, right, we're not doing a full update this year, businesses who are running RS2 or RS3 who wanted to update to this year's full release to be supported for 30 months onward would now be stuck. They'd be like, oh, so what do we do now? We're going to have to just update to 1809 instead. And that's not what Microsoft wants. Microsoft wants businesses updating to the latest version of Windows 10 available whenever businesses are beginning to upgrade. So that's why 19H2 exists. It's like a fake feature update so that they can give the external support deadlines to Windows 10 an actual thing, you know, so developers can update to it. Not developers, businesses can update to it, and you know the schedules still work out. Otherwise, if Microsoft really wanted to, they could just say, right, we're just doing one update a year. And businesses, if there were no differences in the support schedules, then you know businesses wouldn't care either way. But since those fall updates always have 30 months of support, it's important for Microsoft to have this full release for businesses, and that's why we're doing a 19H2 update. So that's basically all we know about 19H2 so far. Don't know of any of the specific changes in the release. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be anything super crazy. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, yeah, I mean, that's what I kind of find funny. Like, it's the usual group of Windows watchers who are like, you know, including yourself, flipping tables a little bit because it's like they're not scheduled. At the same time, the joke about this update is it's not even much of an update. So it's like we're not.
Yeah,
like...
I'm not bothered about this being such a small update. I don't care. In fact, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that 19H2 Microsoft.
It's like a breather.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a good thing that Microsoft has the chance here to sort of just focus a little bit more on 19H1 and fix up a few things here and there and make the OS run better. The problem I have with it is Microsoft's inability to communicate that there has been a delay. We have to find out via a tweet. Look, if you're going to make an announcement in a blog post that says, hey, we will start flighting these bits in the spring, and then you don't deliver in the spring, there should be a follow-up blog post that says, gone through PR that says specifically why you have not reached your goal of shipping this in the spring. Because right now we don't know why they haven't shipped in the spring. We're just guessing that it's because they haven't got all their messaging together internally and stuff, but it could be anything. So that's what I'm frustrated about. Why not just do like a brief blog post, or even
Wasn't there something with the core that's being updated or something like that?
Yeah, but that's more 20H1 stuff. 19H2 is based on the core work that was completed with 19H1, so there's nothing like crazy on the underhood for 90H1, H2. But yeah, like I just don't like how Microsoft fails to communicate these sort of minor things that are important to people like you and me and people who watch Microsoft, because my inbox is full of people asking about 19H2, and it's like, I don't know. Honestly, Microsoft is late. I can see that. I don't know why, and I can't refer to them to any official answer, and that's the most frustrating part about it. But yeah, 19H2, small update. I assume we'll get an official announcement of what's going on in the next few weeks. I can't imagine they'll leave it until August.
Any speculation that this delay has to do with them either waiting on bits that are just not there yet, or waiting or working on something like Windows Core OS and Windows Lights?
I don't think it's specific to Windows Core OS stuff. I think you could be right. They could be waiting on some bits, because I believe Mary Jo Foley of ZDNet has heard that Microsoft might backport some 20H1 bits. So if so, then they would have to wait for those bits to be in 20H1 before they can backport them. But I'm not too sure on that. So yeah, I don't know. Honestly, it could be that they're waiting on a few bits to be done in 20H1 to backport, or it could just be that they haven't managed to clear up their sort of messaging and how they want to deliver it, and sort of explain what 19H2 is. Because like I said, they could come out and say, oh, Windows 10 19H2, known as the October 2019 update, and pretend it's like a full-on release. Or they could be honest and say, right, so what we're doing a sort of roll-up updates for 20H1. Businesses will be able to update to this and be supported for 30 months, etc., etc., etc. So maybe that's what they're trying to work out. How do we talk about 19H2 to the public?
Yeah, that's definitely, I can see that as being playing a role here.
Yeah.
It's hard to, I don't know. As someone who, I'm into the insider stuff, but not really. I'm not even on the whatever fast ring is now and stuff. I'm been, although it seems like it's pretty safe right now too if you jump on fast ring, right?
Nothing's happening in it. That's why.
Well, there were a couple like tweaks and
there's been minor changes here.
It's minor, right? Yeah. So, it's kind of a weird state right now. That said, I mean, we forgot to talk about this at the very beginning, but we can talk about it now, which is Panos Panay tweeted out 4 photos this week.
Oh yeah, he did.
From the Device and Experience event. That's what they're calling it, right? Devices and Experience.
Yeah, so Microsoft has these things called all hands meetings, where specific teams sometimes get together, and it's like the whole team. So in this case, for Panos Panay, it was the engineering and devices team. They all got together, and they have an internal meeting where they show off some stuff that's coming soon, talk about projections and plans for the future. And at this event, and this is something we've already talked about, at this specific all hands meeting, Panos Panay, I believe it was him, showed off Suntoris, which is the dual screen foldable surface that runs Windows Lights. And Panos just showed photos of the event. He didn't obviously show anything secret. There was no devices in the photos. Trust me, I looked. No. But yeah, it was just sort of almost confirming the fact that, hey, this is the room where we showed it off, but you can't see it.
I think that was funny, right? Because so Tom Warren had heard that from The Verge that they had shown off Centaur to some sort of foldable device at some kind of event, and then a week and a half later, Panos showed the actual photos from that event, and so it's legit. It actually happened. It was just kind of cool to there was actually a lot of people there, which also goes to say that a lot of those people held that secret. I would say 99.8% held a secret. So, because it's not like our inbox was flooded then with there were no photos. Obviously, you had to be gutsy to sit in that audience, and as he shows that on screen, to raise your phone up and be maybe someone had Google Glass or something like that. But yeah, so we didn't get to see it, but it confirms that that event actually happened, and that's where it was. And it was about devices and experiences. So lends credence. And, we were talking about this in our new Teams room. Yes, Zach, I, and the group are starting to use Teams now.
We're trying. It's difficult, but we're trying.
It is. But we're talking about how, you look at the ThinkPad X1 teased by Lenovo, the foldable display device that's coming out in early 2020. This event that's happening now, where apparently they showed it off. And then we heard from one of my sources that in October, there's definitely going to be a Surface event. We've heard from another source that absolutely there's an October event scheduled, who I won't name, but and then I heard from my source that that's happening, and there's gonna be 5 devices showing off there. And we talked a little bit about that. Supposedly Surface Book 3 probably, and we're just speculating at this point. Surface Laptop 3, new Surface Pro, but this device, the Centaurus device, could also be shown off. And when it surprises, the big question is, if they announce it on October, it doesn't mean it ships in November, which is usually how the Surface stuff goes. Yeah, what would happen is they would show it off in October, and this would be a spring 2020 or, first half 2020 kind of thing, because that's where it's up in the air right now. But it seems like there's just too much of this stuff going on right now, right? Of like these weird little hints. Like, why would Panos show it off to that group? And it was a large group. I mean, there must have been I don't know, 150 people there or something like that.
Engineering and devices is huge because it spans Windows and Surface engineering.
And so there were a lot of people. So why would he show that off if this thing wasn't, dare I say, imminent? And I feel like it's building up to something, which is why, although not a lot is happening with Windows 10 for desktop, I kind of don't care because I'm excited about that stuff, right? I want foldables, I want new devices, I want new Surface, I want new OS experiences, I want Windows Lite, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like we're building towards that. We'll obviously find out more come October, but October is potentially turn out to be, I said this on the last podcast, the biggest October event since 2015. Doesn't mean phones will be there, but this could be like, I may be coming out there with that meme, the guy holding all the stuff, like, look at all the surfaces. It could be like that. So that's potentially super exciting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot riding on a Centaurus announcement in October. One, the fact that, like you mentioned, Panos sort of showed it off internally recently, which, according to a couple other people, the Surface team don't usually show off hardware in all-hands meetings. Not really. They've shown off third-party hardware that hasn't been announced, like the Lenovo Foldable that has been announced now. That was shown off in an all-hands meeting back in Feb, I believe. But they've never shown in-house sort of upcoming Surfaces and whatnot. And I think that so that was the first time. So that's one of the reasons why I think a Centaurus announcement in October makes sense. But the other thing is, I think OEMs are sort of getting a bit, impatient about when the Windows Lite and is being announced, because Lenovo has announced a Windows Lite device.
That's weird.
Before
right?
Windows Lite's been announced, and they had to. This is incredible. You went into these hands-ons with Lenovo. Lenovo was telling people, "Oh yeah, this device here is running Windows 10, but it doesn't run Windows 10 when you buy it." That's strange. That's really weird. So this sort of stuff must be imminent, and I think for Windows Lite to be announced, Microsoft also needs to announce Centaurus alongside it to show off Windows Lite, to be like, hey, so this is the new OS, here's this device that sort of goes with it, just like they did with the original Surface RT and Windows 8. So
there has to be something here. I mean, Lenovo is like, it's not like they built this product. They've been working for 3 years, but they didn't work on it in secret, right? Like they didn't just let's just do this thing. Yeah. The OEMs work closely now with Microsoft, whether it's on engineering for the software, whether it's drivers, whether it's new technology. And they also work closely with Intel, who's been doing these sort of prototype devices. In fact, at Computex, they showed off 2 foldable type of devices. One was a gaming one, which eventually became what is I get the name right now, Asus Pro Duo, the one with the 2 screens. It's the second half of the screen. That's based off an Intel reference design, slightly modified. And then they had a dual screen device, which, may be the basis of Centaurus or something like that. I don't know. But like, again, that was weird, right? That Intel showed those things off. Like, why is all that, I wrote that article like a year and a half ago, I think it was, saying like dual screens and foldables are going to be like the big thing that's going to happen in PCs next. And everybody was like, that's dumb. It's not happening. And now we're starting to see that momentum building. So there has to be some sort of thing this is all building towards. And they're dropping these little teasers and Easter eggs along the way, which we're finding. I think part of it's also gauging feedback, right? This is a risk, right? Not all these devices aren't going to be for everyone. They're going to be for some people a supplementary device. Like, there's a lot of wiggle room here for nailing this stuff. But I should mention Unbox Therapy this week I think it was this week or last week, got their hands on that ThinkPad X1 foldable. And they're the first to actually get it themselves. Now, there's only like one prototype, so they had to get it and send it immediately back. But it was interesting because Lou is echoing what I've been hearing, which is, hey, this actually makes more sense than the foldable phone. Like, this is actually kind of cooler, because you showed when you fold it in half, it's like half the size of a device, and it's just much smaller and portable. And he was actually like really like into it. And so, but that reaction, right, in those comments and everything like that is sort of what I think they're, because if it was the opposite, if people hated it, they may be rethinking their plans here. So I think they're doing this, purposefully to sort of build interest and build it up until it's released. But
yeah, and like you said, they have been sort of dropping hints here and there, like the modern OS mentions. I think that's a big sort of signifier that they're getting closer to actually announcing something officially. It's that blog post in itself is really weird. If you read it, it's like almost grammatically incorrect and stuff. I assume it was translated from another language, but yeah, like if they're talking about modern OS and they're showing off these modern devices internally now in all hands meetings, which they never do, and then Panos is actually tweeting photos from the event, because they do all hands meetings, I assume, quite often. I think once a month at least, and no one usually shares photos from them until now. So it's like, I think something's building up to it. And of course, maybe everyone internally is expecting to announce it in October, but something could delay it and they can push it back, as is usually the case at Microsoft. But yeah, right now it's looking likely that we'll get a Centaurus announcement in October, because that's when the next service event is that we know of.
I should give a shout out here to Channel 1 on Mixer is now sponsoring us.
Yes.
We're on the air for the next 15 minutes. So there's thousands now watching us. Hello. We'll switch up right now to, I guess, a little bit more gaming stuff then for those people. Let's talk about Anaconda, Lockhart, Xbox One 2020 version. This is the one that was talked about at E3 last week. And the rumor started, I believe, was it you or Brad Sams?
I believe, I think Brad Sams wrote the report first, and Jez was hearing similar at the time. Then I think Jez followed up with something after the fact. But the original report was that Microsoft were planning to release 2 next-generation consoles under the codenames Anaconda and Lockhart. And these consoles were under the family codenamed Scarlet. Now, that's what Microsoft unveiled on stage at E3. They announced Project Scarlet. But interestingly, they never unveiled it as 2 products. Phil Spencer on stage sort of talked about the consoles being one item. And that was the end of that. And then in an interview after the fact, I think he mentioned that, we did release consoles, as I mentioned. It was the discless Xbox One and now Anaconda. So it's looking like Lockhart's gone. And yes, according to Brad Sams, and I believe we've been hearing this from our own sources as well, Lockhart is now been put on the shelf, and Anaconda is now the sort of main prize that Microsoft is working on for the next-gen Xbox. And the reason for this, there's lots of different reasons. I don't think I'm going to all of them, but the primary reason is it makes developing games a bit more confusing, and I think it makes buying a new console more confusing for consumers as well. So with Lockhart and Anaconda, developers, if they are building games for the next generation Xbox, they have to build for Lockhart and then scale up, which technically puts the next generation Xbox at a slight disadvantage compared to the PlayStation 5, which would only have one SKU, which is slightly more powerful than Lockhart. So a developer would have to build their game, make sure it runs fine on Lockhart, and then scale up to Anaconda, which means it might not be as capable of a game as it is on PlayStation 5 from the get-go. So if you get rid of Lockhart, then there's no problem, because Anaconda and PS5, they can fight head-to-head. And one of the other reasons I think they've got rid of Lockhart is because they don't know whether the PlayStation 5 will be more powerful or less powerful than Anaconda. The original plan for Lockhart was to sandwich the PlayStation 5 with a cheaper, slightly less powerful SKU than the PlayStation 5 and a slightly more expensive and slightly more powerful SKU than the PS5. So you'd have Lockhart at whatever price, PS5 at whatever price with slightly more power than Lockhart, but then Anaconda at a bit more than the PlayStation 5 but with more power. But I don't think they know if Anaconda will actually be more powerful than
I don't
the
think there's no
PlayStation.
way they could know. I mean, granted, AMD is making both chips and GPUs, but it's not like AMD is like
When it comes down
double
to,
dealing.
I think it comes down to how well the development kits and stuff talk to the hardware.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the software and the drivers will
Yeah.
play a big part in it. So there's a lot going on. We should also point out that like this is part of the problem of reporting leaks,
Yes.
which is when you report a leak, or it's at that time, but sometimes it's not even at that time. Sometimes the info you're hearing is actually a month or two old or even older. But as we've pointed out before, that like you don't get daily updates on that leak from your sources.
Right.
It's not like sometimes your sources aren't directly involved with it. They just saw it, or heard about it or talked to a person and they're sharing that info, which means you're not getting live updates. So you can't change that story. But still, it gets out there that there's 2 Xbox new ones that are coming out. And evidently, there was a heated debate and discussion within the Xbox team about whether they should do this and what the best approach was. It's not like it was just a simple decision. And this is part of the problems or not problems, but challenges and things that happen when you work on these types of devices and releases, which is that, plans change. And sometimes we don't hear about those plans changing immediately. Sometimes we do. But it's that thing on Twitter, right? If you post a story up like, I don't know, Zach Bowden fathers 12 children, doesn't take care of them. And that rumor spreads. Everybody hates Zach now. And then 6 hours later, I retract the story or go, oh, it wasn't 12 children. It was 12 cats and he takes care of them. That story will get a lot less traction and a lot less retweets than the original story, so the damage is done. And that's sort of the case here, too. Whenever you do follow up and explain, all right, they changed their plans, it's like, people want to blame you for it. But, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I'll just turn my fan on here.
I love the other thing as well, where there's people online who assume that we lied. Like, oh, you liars, oh, you was just lying, weren't you? You silly liars. I was like, no, what do you think we do for a living? You think we just make stuff up? The things we write about are, and I'm not just saying we as in like me and Dan, but everybody in the industry who writes about tech, whether it's Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, whoever, who writes about things that haven't been announced yet, if those things get cancelled or don't come out, I highly doubt anyone was making it up. That would be a silly thing to do. Likely, plans changed. I mean, I'm even seeing this with Windows Core OS and C# because that's technically not shipping yet. There's people who shout at me all the time going, don't you feel stupid talking about this stuff for like 3 years and nothing's out yet? I'm like, no, not really. I mean, I'm happy to talk about these awesome things that Microsoft are working on years before they're ready. I'm sorry that it doesn't line up with your schedule of wanting it now, but that's not going to stop us from talking about it. But yeah,
but this happens with everybody, right? I mean, this is like when people with Google, to me, people are always like, "Oh, what about fuchsia?" I'm like, "Oh, what about it?" I don't know. Has there been much on fuchsia lately? I haven't really heard. Actually, we should. Well, we'll talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about the Google Slate.
Google sucks.
Well, no, I think we'll tie it into the iPad OS thing.
Yeah.
Discussion, but so Anaconda, so we're still expecting the better of the consoles out there, which I think is kind of fine. If you think about Xbox One X can then become the Xbox One S version of that, basically lower cost. I mean, you can already get the Xbox One X for what, $380 or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen it for $349, which is not bad. Yeah.
So I think that will become the backup second, which I think actually makes more sense. I think customers understand that. It's like, because the games will still be compatible between the two, but then devs can target the higher SKU. I think it's too much for devs to chew on with 2 new ones.
Yeah.
As far as if it's more powerful than, you and I, we don't care, right? The question is, it's going to be, does it do 4K gaming at 60 frames per second for basically every game, right? Because that is basically what should be expected. And then some games will go higher than that for frames per second too. And there's even 8K 8K support, which of course is really down the road. But I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it's gonna be exciting stuff.
I think the biggest thing will be how much it costs compared to the PlayStation 5. Because if it's a bit more expensive, then it's game over. Because gamers, they latch onto that like there's no tomorrow. If the Xbox, whatever the next gen Xbox is like $50 or $100 more than the PlayStation 5, game over for the next gen Xbox. It has to be the same price or cheaper if possible. And I wonder, would Microsoft be willing to lose some money on the console hardware with the next gen?
I already could imagine they're not making a ton on the hardware.
Yeah, but would they be happy to lose a little bit, but just to undercut the PlayStation 5 and get a head start? I assume Phil Spencer would be okay with that, but I don't think Satya Nadella.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it, right? I think Nadella's thing is it's like we're not doing that anymore, where we're taking losses on stuff. That said, Spencer's been pretty vocal about the fact that the console race and war is all nonsense from years ago. It's about a platform now. Xbox as a service. It's about delivering games across devices, whether it's going to be PC or streaming on your phone. The console is just one piece of it. And, he pointed out about how, like, you have companies like Google not even releasing a console and they're getting into gaming, right? So you have this, like, it's a changing environment. Spencer, I think, is smart enough to see, again, as I always point out, looking down the road, where this stuff is going to be, not where it is right now, which is what most people, gamers and consumers are looking at. It's like right now, the world we're living in. He's planning for down that road, and I think that's a smart approach here. Yeah. We'll still have to bear through all the, PlayStation 5, and the pricing thing is, I mean, that is key, right?
Yeah, it is.
How do you guess that? Guess it right.
I'm going to guess right now, and let's timestamp it. Right now, I'm going to say $499.
Yes.
Yeah, $499. Or so $449 for the Xbox Anaconda.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think PlayStation 5 will be $499. In which case, Xbox wins. We'll have to see. But yeah, no, I'm excited for next gen Xbox as long as it has TV support. That's the one thing I'm really hoping the next gen still has, because Microsoft released the Xbox One as like the hub for everything in your home, in the living room. So now basically everything that I watch on TV goes through the Xbox, including my cable box and stuff. So if they got rid of the whole TV idea, my living room would fall apart.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag for me. I got rid of cable years ago. I just use Hulu for live TV now, and
as long as it still has voice commands to turn your Xbox on and off. And the IR blaster, so you can turn the TV on and off automatically. Those two things, I think, are key.
Oh yeah, well, let's go down that road of like wish lists here. You and I just want a controller that has a microphone in it.
I want a controller with a fingerprint reader on it, so I can log in and have to type my password.
That fingerprint reader would be amazing.
Yeah. Every time I bring this up, gamers are like, "What an idiotic idea!" I'm like, "Why? Fingerprint readers are cheap as chips. Might as well just do it." Now. Right. And they're great, yeah. It makes so much sense. Like the Kinects and logging into the Kinects.
Put an iris scanner where the Xbox logo is. You hold it up to your face.
Yeah. Face ID. Yeah. I think the fingerprint reader on the controller makes so much sense.
And it's one of those things, right? Like if it raises the cost, they don't think it's going to be popular. Like fine, release an accessory.
Yeah, like a separate controller.
Like they make a Surface keyboard, right? They have the Surface keyboard. They have a Surface keyboard with a fingerprint reader.
Yeah.
Choose your poison.
Yeah, even if the fingerprint one's $50 more, just have it as a separate accessory. That
you can
pass
it on to me. I'll buy it. It's fine. Give me the option. That's all I want.
Phil, if you're listening, do it.
An option. All right. So that does it for the Xbox news. I'm sure there'll be a lot more going on there. So let's talk about Cortana.
Yay.
it's not dead. So what happened this week with Cortana that was kind of nice?
So on an official level, nothing. Microsoft hasn't announced anything. They haven't shown anything off. But in the latest Windows 20H1 Insider build, what was it, 18.9.2, there's a brand new Cortana app hidden in the OS. And I say app because it is a standalone dedicated UWP app that can be updated via the store. If technically possible, it could be updated via the store. Right now, it's not in the store, of course. It's just hidden in the OS. But people poked around and got it to run, and it's an entirely new Cortana experience. It's sort of very similar to the conversational UI found on Android and iOS. So if you've used Cortana on Android and iOS and you've typed into the app, you get those sort of speech bubbles that has like a threaded conversation. You are now getting that on Windows 10, and this will replace the sort of really rubbish Cortana that's currently available on Windows 10 today. It's a very clean UI. It is entirely UWP. There was some confusion at first. Many people thought it was a Win32 app that had like a UWP sort of layer on top, but no, it's a pure UWP app that taps into Win32 for some background services or something. So apparently, I didn't know this, but UWP apps you can have a pure UWP app that on desktop has a service that can sort of tap into some Win32 things in the back end, but it's still a pure UWP app which runs on, say, mobile, Xbox, HoloLens, etc., etc. So that's pretty cool. Of course, this new Cortana doesn't run on mobile because that's why would it? But yeah, so it has a threaded conversation. It sort of promotes a keyboard input instead of using your voice, although of course you can still use your voice. And in this initial sort of build where it's not actually official in it yet, it works for the most part, but there's some things it can't do yet, like it won't pull your schedule up, it won't open apps, etc., etc. But it can do most of the other, like tell me a joke, what's the weather like, the usual Cortana commands and whatnot. So it is pretty cool. It's a very nice looking experience. It does hook into the Windows shell, so when you click on the Cortana button, it does actually pull up this app in the sort of, as if it was a sort of fly out to the taskbar. So it is, although it is a dedicated UWP app, it does look native to the Windows shell, which is, well, native is a strong word. It does look like it's part of the Windows shell, which is nice. It has access to your notebook still. No access to devices yet. It is very early. I assume they're going to build this out and do more with it because
the Android and iOS apps have access to devices.
There's not much Fluent in it yet either. It does have Fluent context menus, but the actual UI
does it have rounded corners.
Has rounded corners.
Awesome.
It has rounded. Actually, I think I'd say they're too rounded in Cortana right now.
Wow. Yeah. It's the roundiest of round corners.
It's the roundest. It's almost like semicircle. It's like ridiculous. But yeah, I'm excited. This has actually warmed my heart a little bit because I was getting worried about Cortana Windows 10 because it started to get really bad. In fact, I don't even have it. The button isn't even on show anymore on my taskbar because it's so bad I don't use it. But with this, I would absolutely be re-enabling Cortana because it becomes useful again. I actually want to use it now because
I keep it around just so when Jez says something stopped working, I can test it and be like, no, it's working fine here.
It's working fine. Yeah, and I think the biggest deal here because, this will change things for Cortana. Being able to be updated via the store is a big deal. It's no longer tied to feature updates. If Microsoft wants to change something up in Cortana, add new feature, change something, they can now just push out an update to the Microsoft Store, and Cortana gets updated, and there you go. I think that's arguably the biggest benefit and the biggest deal when it comes to making Cortana a dedicated UWP app. And I also think this could open the door to being able to have other assistants in place of Cortana on the taskbar in the future as well.
That would be interesting. Yeah. That's a whole separate thing. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Because I brought up that thing in the past about it depends, I guess, if Microsoft is building out APIs to allow companies to access that same information, right? Or would it just be like Alexa sitting on your desktop, which can control your Alexa devices, but can't do anything with your email?
Well,
I don't know.
How they could do it is via skills, right? Microsoft could release an Alexa skill that just gives Alexa access to your Microsoft account, email, photos, data, documents, OneDrive, and it does it through that. Because I think that technically it's how it works from Cortana now, technically. If you want to check email, you open it up. It says, would you like to hook up Outlook to Cortana? It's like, yeah, please. And there you go.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, the APIs, if they're going to actually write those out so that devs and companies can have access to them, or at least partners, right? Because there's different levels of APIs. Some APIs are like internal just to Microsoft. Some are OEM partners can get access to them by requests and guidance. And then there's the ones open up to developers and anyone can kind of use them. So that's an interesting prospect. That's obviously dangerous though, because it's just like if you do that, I mean, what would the choice be though? It would just be Alexa, right? Zero evidence
Google
that
could
Google could they? I mean, they could. Would they? This is Google we're talking about. We've done zero to ever do anything to make life better on Windows 10. I mean, they did release a search app years ago, which was totally dumb. But they've been nothing but hostile. I don't know. But it is one of those things, right? Maybe if Google could, I'd hate to have that option. I don't want Google. And of course, no one's going to put Siri on their computer because that'd be stupid. And same thing with Samsung. Who wants Bixby?
Yeah, definitely not Bixby.
I'm sure Samsung would like to do that though on their laptops that
Yeah,
people
that's
buy.
true. Yeah, maybe OEMs are asking for it. That'd be interesting. Imagine buying a Samsung laptop that comes with Bixby by default instead of Cortana.
Yeah, imagine.
It could be possible, I guess. But yeah, no, I think this is cool. The UI is very nice. It is early, but it's very clean. It has light and dark mode support, which is pretty nice. And since it's a UWP app, I think some people have just taken it and ran it on older versions of Windows 10, like the May 2019 update, which I think is pretty funny. But yeah, this is exciting. This is what we talked about before at Build, where we had that meeting with the Cortana team. And I simply straight up said, hey, Cortana on Windows 10 sucks. Is it going to get better? And they were like, oh, yeah, it will be. What you're seeing in Windows 10 at the back at Build was an interim step. And now we have this new Cortana experience, which is leaps and bounds better than what it has been.
I just want to address a question here. So someone says, am I the only one who finds the whole Cortana Alexa team up makes Microsoft look lazy? No. And here's why. It is a weird take. Amazon has no... and Alexa specifically does nothing for Windows 10. Like, try it. Go download the app. Like, it really doesn't do much. It sits there. It can tell you the weather. It can, like, control your Alexa devices. And you can order diapers from Amazon.com. Good luck with that. No one uses, by the way, Alexa to order anything from Amazon, which is the whole point of Alexa in the first place. You can maybe tell it to play music. I'm not sure if they've actually added the ability to stream music through Alexa yet. That was supposedly coming. So Alexa is good at doing Alexa-ish things. Cortana, its strength is the fact it ties into all your Microsoft accounts. It ties into To-Do, Outlook. It could do OneNote. It can do into Office. It has the ability, because Microsoft owns it, to get into your data because it's going to be linked to your Microsoft account. You give permission to do it. This is when we interviewed the head of Cortana back at Build, he was talking about how it's foundational to what they're doing in Windows and Office. They're focusing mostly in Office right now because that's where their paying customers are. But all that stuff is things that Amazon will never have access to because Microsoft is not prepared, as far as we know, to open up all your personal data on your PC and all your stuff on your Microsoft accounts to a company like Amazon, who, potentially has a lot more vested interest in selling your data or manipulating your data or doing whatever, right? So the fact, and this is Microsoft's whole philosophy on AI and these assistants, which is the idea that you want an AI that just one. You just pick one. You're a fanboy. Say it's Google. You think Google's awesome. Cool. Google will never have a role on Windows 10 PC. End of story. It just won't. It'll also never have a role in enterprise. It just won't. There are no companies that are going to be like, let's let Google access all our data and, LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff and just, hey, have at it. That will never happen. The fact is, the world we're moving towards, you're not going to have a single AI system. Microsoft's position is they're working on a lot of back-end technologies that then other companies can create their own assistants. So like Bank of America, I've used an example, has their own assistant I think it's called Erica, which walks you through and all that. And companies are basically doing this now. And Microsoft's one of the companies that are powering and enabling that to happen. Microsoft sees a world where AIs they should be compatible with each other. It's like, so they can work across the world and because certain AIs are going to have specialties that they will never have access to. That, to me, sounds like a more realistic world. And you should be rooting for that world because the other option is you're going to trust a company like Google to have all access to all your data, which can then be hacked. It can be sold. Like, it's just a lot more risky. It's also likely never going to, like I said, play a role in enterprise and business and secure environments. So, like, to me, you should be rooting for the Alexa Cortana partnership because that's a better world for me.
I mean, I look at it like this. Like, if you had a real assistant in real life, it would be almost useless to have that assistant only be able to talk to you and no other assistants in the office, right? No, you can't talk to the other assistants. You only have to talk to me, because that would make your assistant kind of useless in the office space, right? But in real life, if you work if you're a manager or something, you have like a personal assistant. It's usually quite helpful for your personal assistant to be able to go and talk to other assistants and other employees at the company to get information and do things, and be useful. The same applies to the virtual assistants. Why it's more beneficial to have Cortana be able to talk to Alexa and all the other virtual assistants out there, instead of it just being sort of silent in its own sort of, I can only talk to myself and you, and I can't talk to any other virtual assistants. I think it's very limiting, and being able to open the door to Alexa and I guess Bixby and Google Assistant in the future is a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's the more realistic approach. That said, Google is going to try to be the one to control it all. But I mean, Google can't do Amazon stuff. Google's, if you have an iPhone and you're in the Apple world, I mean, Google's voice assistant is completely useless, right? I mean, you're going to have to rely on Siri. And Siri is not terrible. I actually like the way it works. It does do dumb things. I'm not saying it's like a brilliant AI, but its integration and the way its experience is actually very nice. I'd rather have Siri hook up to Cortana and give me data that way, because every company's there's no way Apple is ever going to be like, let's let Google on our phone and you can set it as a default assistant. That'll never happen. Never in a million years. It's not happening. So what's Apple? Would you rather be forced to use Siri, or would you rather Apple be like, all right, cool, we're going to allow Siri to talk to Cortana and talk to Google? Wouldn't you rather have that option instead of having to pick one and do this weird fanboy team thing? Because, and I've said this before, and I'll keep harping on it, all of these things are dumb right now. If you have a strong opinion that Google Assistant is amazing, you're really easily impressed, in my opinion, because this stuff I think is still stupid simple. It's like, play music. What's the weather for tomorrow? Is this place open? And it's just like, or text, Zach, right? It's really basic stuff right now. So I don't know, but that was a nice little side rant. Did not plan for that rant, but
the other thing I want to highlight is the fact that it's a UWP, which still not dead.
Yeah, and so the reason they would use UWP here, I think, makes sense, right? So we've talked about this. UWP uses XAML for its UI. XAML is what you see a lot of the Windows shells is being turned into, what we expect Windows Lite and Windows Core OS, well, Windows Lite specifically, the shells, or it's going to be based on. So XAML is the stuff that it's the UI, and it's newer. It's built to be optimized for Windows 10. And so the fact that they would, a UWP app is still the holy grail, right? If you're a dev and you're like, I want the best experience on Windows 10 or HoloLens or, Surface Hub for my app, you build a UWP app. Full stop. It's going to give you full API access. You're going to get all access to the features like live tiles, jump lists. You're going to get everything. You get the store updates. You get XAML. You're going to get performance. It gets battery optimized. You get secure. You get it all. And that's still the grail. But if you're a developer who's like, that's cool, I would love to do that. I don't have the budget. I don't have the time. I need to write this to go cross-platform. That's when you start to fall back to other options like JavaScript, Electron, fall back to PWA. Or you could be like, I have an old app, an old desktop app that's Win32. I'm not prepared yet to rewrite it all UWP. You can take some XAML stuff. Microsoft's in a position here where they're making Cortana as an app, and it makes sense. They want to update it through the store. It's going to be a key component across their core devices, HoloLens, PC, obviously, Windows Lite especially. And there you want the full optimized version if you cared about it, right? I would actually say if Microsoft were like half-assing this, they would do like a JavaScript WebView version, which is kind of actually what we have now of Cortana versus the legwork for UWP. But this will, and the fact that this is potentially going to be an app in the store means they don't have to wait twice a year to upgrade Cortana anymore, which is what they have to have done. It's like, oh, we got to ship this stuff in time for the insider thing. Like, they don't have to do that. They could just be like, that team could just be like, we have an update now, and push it through the store. You get an update, it updates that component. Like that, it's the same experience of having the new Chromium browser. It's like, oh, you get updates basically daily, and who knows what the updates are. Presumably it's getting better, though. That's a cooler experience. It falls into line with the theory that Microsoft's been working on this OS for a long time, which is let's cut as many of it into pieces as we can, is that a word?
Modularize.
Yeah. And make it easier to update and work on. That's really the important thing, is to work on, so they can not even, people complaining about updates twice a year. It's too much, just once a year. But it doesn't reflect the world we live in, which is you get app updates daily, right? Mm-hmm. But the more they appify core components of the operating system, the more those teams can just work on that stuff and not be beholden to the Windows dev team, which doesn't even kind of exist anymore as a formal group. And that's exciting, right? So that's all good news too.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people online every time Microsoft releases a new Win32 app, like the new Edge or Microsoft Teams, or I guess Skype for desktop. There's always a reason why they've gone to Win32 instead of the other thing, UWP, and it's because they want cross-platform. They want to be able to run on older versions of Windows that don't support UWP, or they want to run on Mac OS. In which case, it doesn't make sense to build UWP. That would be silly, right? So things like Teams, Edge, it makes sense for those to be Win32. But with Cortana, which only really makes sense on Windows 10 and on Microsoft products, there's no reason to build it as a Win32 program. This is now a UWP because it's designed to run on Windows 10 and Windows Core OS. It's to scale across all of those pure Windows devices. And so they go for UWP. So the idea that UWP's dead because Microsoft has moved Edge to Win32, or that Teams is Win32.
That was a weird take I always found.
Yeah, so do I. Like, that is a strange take. It means nothing. Like, what Microsoft is doing is they're choosing what's best for what their intentions are for these services and programs. Teams is designed to sort of take on Slack very aggressively, be available everywhere and anywhere. A platform is available. It makes sense to build a Win32 program that scales across Windows 7, 8, and 10, as well as Mac OS and iOS and Android. They can target everything quite quickly.
Conversely, had the 3 screens in the cloud vision of Ballmer had worked out, Windows Phone is, 60% market share, 2019. Windows tablets have displaced the iPad, and everybody runs a Windows PC, and we have Windows TVs and Microsoft in our car. Like, if that was the world we lived in, obviously Microsoft probably wouldn't care as much about cross-platform, right?
Yeah.
Then UWP would be like, no, you only build UWP or you shut the hell up. But that's not the world we live in.
Yeah, Microsoft doesn't have that control.
Yeah, and even Apple doesn't have that control. Like in the United States, and I know you were surprised by this, but in the U.S., like iPhone is huge. Like if you go to a city in the U.S.
has an iPhone.
And you're female, you have an iPhone. And I don't mean to gender stereotype. I'm just saying, like, women just love the iPhone in the United States.
Well, I think every man I've met in America has an iPhone, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's high. I'm just saying it's slightly higher with females, I think. But
sure.
I think if you're a 20-year-old dude, you're like, Android, I want that challenge. And then you're going to spend your weekends like customizing your home screen and ranting on Twitter about
I'm so tired of customizing Android. I just want it to work.
I'm just saying that's a guy thing. So they're going to use Android a little bit more, where women are just like, just give me something that works, right? But iPhone presence in the United States is huge. It's about 50% of the market. Conversely, the rest of the world is 80% Android, right? So, but outside of the U.S., yeah, Apple's presence tanks, right? Yeah, and that's across everything. Education tanks, PCs tanks. It's like that's the U.S. is their stronghold. So now there isn't one company right now that dominates anything. Google dominates, you could say, phones outside the U.S., not inside. Doesn't dominate desktop or laptops. They're trying. Not having a lot of luck, but they're trying. So all these companies are all over the place right now, all trying to do the same thing. But yeah, that's why and so that is the truth, right? But if it had been a different world we lived in, yeah, we'd just be talking about UWP right now.
Right.
Cool. All right, that does it for that. Let's speak of that segues nicely into the iPad OS discussion. So, Apple had their event a couple weeks ago. Nothing huge, but we knew. So, and this is a big meta point I really want to stress, and I've been saying it forever. Google, Apple, and Microsoft are all working towards the same thing, which is they want their operating systems that are kind of all over the place to be both a phone or mobile operating system as well as a computational platform as well. Now, Apple invested heavily in iOS years ago, built it from scratch, and it's good because it was one of the first operating systems that was truly built from the ground up that was very forward thinking in the way it was built, and they've had a lot of success with it. And they put it on the iPad, and for years, and still true today, we joke around because an iPad is basically a giant iPhone that can't make calls, right? Mm-hmm. And it's still like, I mean, if you ever see a 12-inch iPad, a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, it's hilarious because the icons are so huge. But that said, the iPad's hardware is immaculate. It's very powerful, too. In fact, it's so powerful, the operating system, what it can do is not even realized. And it doesn't support things like trackpad or mouse or file systems or input device. All of that stuff that was solvable. And Apple now is finally going down that road. They're forking iOS into iPad OS. Now, as of right now, it's basically name only.
It means nothing, but I think them
but
announcing...
down the road,
yeah, exactly.
Because down the road, they're going to customize iPad OS to make it more specific to the hardware. And I'm telling you, 100% iOS, or specifically iPad OS, will begin to displace Mac sales for MacBook Air and MacBook. Like that's their goal. It's going to be their consumer computer in the next couple of years. If you don't believe me, that's fine. But that's absolutely what's happening. And it's so obvious. MacBook Pro will continue to be Mac OS. Obviously, that's going to be important for devs and people who do professional work. But for regular consumers, they're not going to need that stuff. And Google is doing the same too. So let's talk about Google briefly. Of course, they had Android OS. They put Android on tablets. It sucked. Then they made Chrome OS, which was Chromebooks, and that was used in schools. And they started pushing it into consumer markets. It's not having a lot of luck in the consumer market, just mostly schools. And then, of course, Google released the Google Slate, which seemed like a cool idea. It was sort of a Surface-esque device. It was like all the devices that try to be Surface failed. Google decided to make that device, which to me is weird, like floppy keyboards, not a good kickstand, a little bit heavy. And the OS was just not optimized for that yet. If you heard this before, it sounds like a lot like how people complain about Windows 10 not being optimized for tablets. Hey, surprise, Chrome OS not really optimized for tablets either. And so Google basically announced this week, it was leaked and they kind of confirmed it, that like, we're kind of done with the Slate, so don't expect a sequel to it. And the reviews were pretty terrible for it, especially for the price, because Slate only got good when you got a Core i7 model, which now you're driving up to like really high price.
It was overpriced to begin with, I thought.
Yeah, and people were buying the Celeron version, which people rip on Celeron fairly. I'm a huge critic of Celeron, but turns out, guess what? Celeron doesn't run Chrome OS very well either. It's terrible on there. And they got rid of the Celeron version apparently already. But Google's going to focus on 2-in-1s and laptops, right, going forward. Sound familiar, anyone? If you remember, Surface Pro years ago went away from being a tablet that can be your laptop to just being
2-in-1.
The best laptop you can buy or something like that, right? They got away from the tablet thing because tablets are kind of dead. And where they're not dead, the iPad exists. And that's it. And so,
but then again, even Apple are trying to move into the 2-in-1 space of iPad.
Exactly. So they're all moving towards this device that's does a little bit of everything. It's instant on, gets LTE, gets long battery life, can run the apps you want it to, could be a tablet or have a keyboard and act like a computer. Now, Microsoft innovated this design with the Surface Pro. Literally, everybody laughed it off years ago. Apple went on stage, called it a toaster, refrigerator, and all this. And now they're all doing it, right? Google, has Chrome OS, but everybody's talking about, they have this thing called Fuchsia, which is like basically what Windows Lite is to Windows 10. But all these companies are working towards the same goal. So like, this is why I always find it weird when people are like making fun of Microsoft or picking teams here. It's like, can't you see they're all doing the same thing? They all want this magical device. And it's not necessarily who gets there first, right? Although in this case, actually, may be surprising. Microsoft may actually get there first. But it's who does it better or who meets the needs of what you're looking for in a device. And I think it's exciting, actually, because computers, as we've known them, have and are evolving, and it's going to this new thing down the road, and you should be aware of that.
Yeah, and I fully believe iPad OS has the potential to take out Surface and that sort of market. Maybe not today in like iPad OS 13, which is essentially still just iOS 13, but that my Apple renaming it to iPad OS is them signifying that, hey, we mean business here. We are over the next few years going to be transforming this operating system into a productivity suite that is capable of running on a 2-in-1 iPad, with a keyboard and maybe even a trackpad in the future. And that can take on the Surface Pro, and that can take on other Windows 10 PCs. And as Dan mentioned, how Apple is trying to turn the MacBook Pro into sort of the professional platform with Mac OS, and then iPad OS and iOS will become the sort of consumer platforms. Microsoft is doing the same thing with Windows Core OS and Windows 10 Pro. Windows 10 Pro will likely always be available on things like the Surface Book 2 or the Surface Book, the Surface Studio stuff, but maybe devices like the Surface Laptop and Surface Go, they become Windows Lite devices because that's the sort of lightweight, more consumer-friendly platform, whereas these sort of Windows 10 Pro devices, which are the Mac OS devices for Apple, they continue to exist in a more premium, sort of more powerful tier. That's what I think is happening with Apple and Microsoft, and I assume Google's going to do the same thing with its Fuchsia project, whenever that shows up. And it's happening. It really is happening. This is I call it ultra mobile computing. The idea of ultra mobile PCs are on the way, as in ultra mobile being like they're very thin, very light, not super powerful, but are good enough for most people to do things, office work and browsing the web, email, YouTube, music, etc., etc. These devices are coming. These platforms are coming. And who does it best and who does it first remains to be seen.
Yep. It's a good time to be into computers. And like I know, talk about just Microsoft here. Talk about what Google's doing, what Apple's doing. We're really moving to this mobile world. And mobile here is not just phones. Mobile means mobile computing. Yeah. Have a computer with you at all times that always gets good battery life, connected to LTEs on the internet. It'll eventually have 5G. You can do game streaming. Like pretty soon you're gonna be able to do this like high-end game streaming of AAA titles to like really thin clients, and it's gonna be like it's gonna be kind of crazy. And so I think it's nice that it does also nice to see that Microsoft's vision, Panos Panay and his team, was the right one, right? I mean, Surface Pro is still to me one of the most. Like I have a ton of laptops, and I'm always, it's like shiny object. Ooh, oh, nice. And I literally just got the Razer Blade 15 in, which now I'm sort of obsessed with. But like the Surface Pro to me is still this like every time I see it, I have to pick it up and like, oh man, it's just so cool. Like if I only had to pick one laptop, I'd probably go with Surface Pro for myself, just because it really is the best of sort of everything.
Mine would be laptop.
Now, I love Surface Laptop, but I'm really got into. I like being able to fold the screen and have it close to me. Okay. To me, that experience is really.
You like that intimacy.
I do like that intimacy. The whole 2-in-1 laptop. Like I'm using the Dell Latitude 7400, which I've talked about a lot on this podcast. We shot the video review. I'm writing it right now. It should be up next week. But like, I love the ability to put the keyboard behind the display and bring that 14-inch screen close to me. It really does change that experience. Not that I ever really want to use it as a tablet. I mean, you can, but that's not what I'm using it for. It's more that presentation mode. And I just like that with Surface Pro. I think it's really kind of cool to do that stuff. But yeah, it's definitely it's a good, exciting world. It's gonna be, I think, and I agree. People listening to this podcast are like, I would never buy an iPad. Surface Pros for me, because I know what I'm doing. And you're right. You know what you're doing, right? But for average consumers, they see an iPad and they see Surface Pro and they're like, they don't know everything. They don't know, for instance, an iPad doesn't have a file system, or if you plug in a thumb drive, it's going to not know what to do with it, or it could just do photos, right? And they don't know that Surface Pro doesn't get the best battery life, or may not be after a couple hours. It's going to take a second to resume, right? And so for them, those are legit choices. They see them as both similar. And so the more the iPad does become like the Surface, and for me, I've said it before, iPad to me is kind of useless because I just don't like the way the interaction is. Add a trackpad to it.
Yeah.
That definitely becomes a lot more interesting.
That's the big
now.
Thing for me with iPad. If it had trackpad support, I would use my iPad way more because I have the cheap iPad, the 9.7 inch, just to have one, and I have like a keyboard case of it and stuff. And typing, writing in Word and doing like typing stuff with it, it's fine. It works pretty nicely, but it kills my workflow every time having to reach up to touch the screen to interact with something.
It's terrible.
It's so bad.
Which is hilarious too, because that was the argument against touchscreens and laptops years ago, made by Apple fans. They were like, but with Apple, you have to do it all the time.
Yeah, here's the thing with that. The laptops with touchscreens, you don't use them all the time. When you're typing, you use the trackpad stuff. Having the touchscreen is great when you just,
option.
It's an option. You've sat down and something comes up, you just reach out, touch it, done. Or you scrolling. Sometimes scrolling with the touchscreen makes so much more sense and it's more comfortable, depending on how you're laying down on the couch.
My girlfriend, she just uses it mostly for swiping away the login screen. She swipes up.
That's a great one as well.
That's like,
I use it on the studio to swipe away notifications. I just swipe them.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, because I always find if I try to click and swipe away, I usually accidentally click on it, and I don't want to click on it. It's dismiss. That's what I use, and it's great. Just those small, every now and then, use cases for touch. It's great, whereas not having it.
Or just using a pen.
Or using a pen. Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
It's all good stuff. But yeah, I'm a little worried with Apple. If they have the potential here. It's always Microsoft's game to lose, right? That's always the case with Microsoft. They always have great ideas, and then they screw up somewhere. And don't laugh off Apple's iPad becoming a competitor to Surface Pro. Now, again, a lot of you guys are gonna be, I need this, I need these dev tools, and I can't use it. Okay, that's fine. But I mean, for average people, it could become a big thing. That said, the good news is it looks like we're on the cusp of Windows Lite and these new devices coming out, which to me looks like the best of everything I ever wanted, which is take the Windows experience and Microsoft services, combine it with the power of its OEM partners, but make it like Chrome OS and iOS. Like, to me, that'd be awesome. But we'll have to, wait till we see how good it is, what the limitations are, and the pros and cons. But
I just want it to be pretty. Please make it pretty.
It has to be. They built it up from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
It's XAML. This thing should be all.
From what we've seen, it is pretty. But I just hope it remains pretty when it ships.
30 frames per second.
Yeah. Oh no, lag.
Long delays. Yeah. I'm not worried about that, but we'll see. All right, I think that wraps it up for this podcast, at least for the main live section. If you are listening to this pre-recorded, this is where the podcast ends. Of course, you can always join us at Friday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on mixer.com/Windows Central or our YouTube.com under Windows Central as well, where we do a live video feed of this and we do Q&A after the podcast where we talk to you guys. So otherwise, as always, you can follow me at Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, or follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN. Let us know how we can do this better, what we're missing, what you want to hear about, and we'll try to oblige. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Awesome. So yes, questions. Awesome. Time for questions. Q&A. We'll hang on for about 10 minutes if you have questions, and then we'll say goodbye. Any news on the 4K cameras for Xbox One? I have not heard about any 4K cameras for Xbox One. I think it was Paul Thurrott who wrote about that. I tried to look into it. No one knows anything. So from my perspective, they don't exist, but I actually don't know. So
just one guy working on that at Microsoft. His name is Bill. You gotta find Bill.
Not Bill Gates though.
No, different Bill.
just some Bill.
Bill's just sitting in his office and like, Bill, where's that 4K camera? We're launching Anaconda soon. And he's like, what? Oh, it's due now?
So I was busy in paint during a frog. Replacing xCloud instead of Lockhart as an entry-level next-gen offer wouldn't be wise, in my opinion, because currently xCloud relies on Xbox One S blades. I believe Microsoft already confirmed that xCloud can and will be powered by Scarlett as well.
Right. And I imagine they'll transition xCloud over to Scarlett devices.
Yeah. I think Phil Spencer's already said that's entirely a thing we can do and will do when Scarlett launches. Jason's in the chat. Hi, Jason. He says Jason looks up Bill in the global address book. How many Bills work at Microsoft?
5. Someone asked, do we use Bing? I use Bing. In fact, I tweeted out about my Bing rewards points are like
You should just
287,000.
redeem Xbox Live forever.
I know, I really should. So yeah, I use Bing across all my devices. A big fan of it. I'm not partisan on this stuff. Like, I get some people are like, Bing sucks, and Zach probably feels that way because he's not in the United States.
Bing, but here's the Bing does suck if you're not in the US. It's awful. I can't use it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, in the US, it's fine. I barely see the difference between it and Google. And I mean, once in a while, I'll use Google to find something I can't, but also Google. It's vice versa for me. I don't know. They both search and find stuff for me. Apparently, Bing has time on page is longer. That is, more people spend time in Bing and searching within Bing than on Google. This was from Statista, I think its name is the site. It's a statistics site. And to be fair, Bing market share is barely, it's like 25% in the United States or something like that across everything. So it's actually very good in the US, and Microsoft makes money from it. Outside the US, though, as Zach said, things go south quickly. I think it's like 3% of the market share worldwide is Bing. And yeah, that's a big challenge. But
someone's asking, why don't we have the questions at the end of the audio version of the podcast? The reason is simple, because the conversation isn't always flowing here. Sometimes there's pauses, there's breaks for silence and stuff as we wait for new questions to come in, and that's why it just doesn't make for good listening.
Also, I should point out, I mean, we have a long-running series on YouTube called Ask Dan Windows, where you guys are invited to submit questions, and I answer them on camera and give more rehearsed and thought-out responses. So that's kind of what that's for. This is more just a reward for you guys who tune in live and join us. It's just kind of fun to do. So,
see, just like that, it's just silence, and as we read the questions, and that doesn't make for good listening on an audio.
Can you give us a quarter and a year for the Windows Lite announcement? No, I mean, that's the point. I mean, we're not getting daily updates on Windows Lite and schedules and all that stuff. They could announce it, as we talked about on the podcast, in October and talk about it. And if they do that, we're not expecting it till 2020. The goal was originally early or first half of 2020. That's the target. But no one is committing to that. And so, and why would they? They're building this software out, right? They're not going to announce something that's that far out yet. So, but that's what we're hearing, first half of 2020.
What do you think the name of the new Xbox console is going to be? Is the word One in it? I don't believe so. I think the next gen Xbox will not be an Xbox One. I think it'll be an Xbox something else, like Xbox 2 or Xbox Infinity. I think they're dropping the One moniker because it's the new generation, and it doesn't make sense to call it One if this is a new generation of consoles. Someone's asking, any idea what changes other than USB-C will be coming to the Surface Pro 7? Not too much. I think from externally, the Surface Pro 7 is going to be very similar to the Surface Pro 6. I think even the bezels will be the same. We know have USB Type-C for charging. The Surface Connect port going away, and I think there was a patent that showcased magnets on the back of it or something. So when you flip the type cover back, it actually sticks to the back of the device instead of flopping around. I think that might be another thing on the Surface Pro 7 as well. But when it comes to design, I don't think we're seeing any major design changes with the Surface Pro 7.
Someone asked me, what's the best convertible under $1,000? I can give you one for $1,050 if you can spare it $50. That'd be the HP Spectre X360, base model, Core i5, 8 gigs of memory, 256 gigs of storage.
What about the XPS 2-in-1?
That's not out yet. I don't know if we have the pricing on that.
Or last year's. I like the thin one of the USB-C ports.
So that was a Y series processor.
Oh, was
I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, that was kind of the point. I would not recommend the old 2-in-1 from XPS 13. You may want to hold on. I mean, I don't know what the new one's going to. The new one may be $999. That we may even post it. I forgot. So maybe if you could hold out to the end of summer, because I do expect that XPS 13 2-in-1 to be my favorite device this year. Of course, that's before October, where Microsoft will probably give us new devices. But I have high hopes for that XPS 13 2-in-1. And if they can come in at $999 for that, that would be That'd be a little bit better than the Spectre, just because the trackpad. But I expect HP, I was told, will be switching over to precision drivers for their next Spectres. So fingers crossed they actually do that.
Is Microsoft going to make a new phone soon? No.
But what about, aren't they going to make an Android phone? Didn't customer service rep? I still remember that story. The MS Power User ran that.
Probably.
The service rep said.
Any idea what the foldable Surface will be named? The Surface Fold? No, we have no indication on names. There's some names for products rarely ever leak. That's a marketing thing.
Yeah.
If I could guess, I'd just got like Surface Fold. I guess it works fine, but I don't think it'll be Fold.
Surface Flow.
Surface.
So they can have Surface Pro, Surface Go, Surface Flow.
Surface No.
Surface No.
I could call it Surface Courier as a callback to the original dual screen PC from Microsoft that never came out.
That would be cool.
Yeah, Surface Journal. I don't think they'll call it Journal.
I like Surface Courier.
Yeah, a Surface Journal would make more sense for the Andromeda device that isn't coming. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what they call it. Could they call it Surface Folio? That could be another one. Is there any chance that Minecraft Earth will be released on HoloLens? I don't think so. There's no reason for it to be. That HoloLens isn't a gaming device. HoloLens 2 isn't anyway, and HoloLens 1 also basically isn't.
Dan, you were saying in the new Ask Dan episode that the new Xbox uses an SSD with RAM. Is that not already out? No. Xbox One X has a hard drive.
And it sucks.
It sucks. No, I mean, it's not bad. It's a faster system, so help makes up for it. But yeah, no, there's no SSDs on these things yet. You can use an external SSD, helps. Then your bottleneck though by the USB 3.1 port, which I forgot which version it is, but it's still, you'll never get the full maximized SSD speeds through that USB port, so it's still not very good. Yeah, it's a big deal. This thing is going to SSD. Big deal.
Has the appearance of Windows Lite changed? Will Seashell replace the tablet experience of a dock like iPad OS? So from the concept / recreation of the thing that I've seen, no, it's still, I don't think it's changed too much. I think it's still pretty similar. The idea of like a center taskbar at the bottom, and regarding an iPad-like dock, I assume you mean like at the bottom that has it's so on Windows Lite. How it works is the taskbar is essentially centered. The start button is in the center of the taskbar, and so is the task view button. They're both in the center, so they're slightly separated. But then your open programs open between the start button and the task view button. So you have all your pin stuff and open stuff down there. So I guess that sort of acts like a dock, if you will. It looks, apps are in the center of a taskbar along the bottom. But I guess technically, yes, it's like a dock, but it's not like the iPad dock. It's still taskbar-like, if that's what you're wondering. But it is XAML-based, which is nice. So it's all modern and fluid.
There was one who I just saw. Let's see.
Is a Service Book 3 coming up? I believe we will have a Service Book refresh in the fall, yes.
Yes, we are expecting that. Someone asked, will the new Xbox support Bluetooth? Don't know. Great question. It'll be absurd to me if it doesn't have Bluetooth. Absurd. Because, yeah, you're right. Because you might use Surface headphones or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Because either Surface headphones should have Xbox Connect built in, or the Xbox should have Bluetooth. It's going to be one of those, right? We already know Surface headphones don't have Xbox Connect. So then the new Xbox should have Bluetooth. I would also, why not have a microphone? Right? So we talked about this on the previous podcast. The Xbox should have Bluetooth and microphones built in or something. I don't know. We'll try to find out, though. It's a good question. I hope so. Either that or Microsoft opens up its Xbox Connect, system up to more manufacturers with, because I think they have to pay. I think you buy, first of all, if you're an accessory maker and you want to do Xbox Connect, I think you need to get permission first to be an exclusive partner. And then I think you also have to pay Microsoft to use it, which, I mean, those are just all hurdles, right? So that's why you don't see it very often in computers and stuff.
There was a question. That was a good question I've lost.
Is Minecraft Earth going to be available for Windows tablets like the Surface Go?
Don't think so. It's
Yeah,
a
I really don't
mobile.
know.
It's a mobile game. No one's playing that kind of game on their tablets. Oh, you think here's the question. You think Windows Lite is going to be good for pros? It will be good for pros in the sense that Chrome OS and iPad is good for pros. That's essentially Windows Lite is Microsoft's version of iPad OS and Chrome OS. That's what it is. If that's not good enough for you, then you won't use it. It will have mouse and keyboard support. You'll be able to run apps in Windows and stuff, but it's primarily designed for consumers who have light workloads, work in office, browse the web, watch YouTube, listen to music, general consumery type stuff. It's not for editing videos in Premiere Pro and rendering 3D models in AutoCAD, and you're doing all that kind of stuff. That's for Windows 10 Pro. Windows 10 Pro is not going away. Windows 10 Pro is going to stick around, and that's what that will be for.
What is your perfect Surface on ARM products? Size, screen, I/O. It's a great question. That's something I was going to write an article on, along with like what I want to see in Surface Laptop 3 or something. So
mine's easy. Mine's so easy. It would be the iPad hardware, the iPad Pro hardware, but running Windows with a Snapdragon 1000 or whatever it's called, the 8CX.
I need a kickstand, bro.
And a kickstand, of course. Sorry, yes. On the back.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the 3:2 aspect ratio a bit more on Surface than the squared resolution that the iPads tend to use, because I don't know, it looks a little bit better when you do use it landscape. So yeah, take the Surface Pro, 8CX. The display size is critical here. 12.5 inches is good. I wouldn't mind if it was slightly larger and thinner, though. I want the display tech to be OLED, though. I'm a big fan of OLED. Either that or Microsoft starts using Dolby Vision certified HDR displays. Because that's a big thing that's been the last year, right? If I had to tell you displays, is companies are now doing HDR 400, which means they usually hit around 500 nits of brightness, which is a huge thing. Their Dolby Vision and all this kind of stuff, and it does make a difference. I find the Surface Pro screen is actually really nice. I find Surface Laptop screen a little dull compared to what's out there. But yeah, make it thin, have a kickstand. Honestly, the Surface Pro's design is kind of perfect for me. There's not, we did see that patent with the magnets in the keyboard so that when you flop it onto the back, it sticks. I mean, that's like, I could do that myself probably, right? But I'd like to see that, right? That's kind of a cool thing built in. Better battery life, but that would be the 8CX with ARM, which should help out. For I/O, give me one type A, one type C. That's all I need. That's all I need, really. And make sure it has LTE. Of course, that'd be the ARM stuff anyway. So, yeah, that's all I really need. They don't have far to go, which is what's always ticked me off with the Surface stuff. It's always like so close to being perfect. We still don't have an LTE Surface Pro 6. I have down here in the floor right here a Surface Pro 5 with LTE, which is awesome. But I don't use it as much because it's Surface Pro 5. I'm not some kind of peasant. What is this?
Can you have North Face Hiker on one of your podcasts? We'd love to have Jason on the podcast. Jason, come on the podcast and talk about your podcast. We can have podcastception. But unfortunately, PR hates it when, Microsoft employees come on our show without permission. So we'd have to get that sorted. Could we see some tablet improvements in Windows 10 based on Lite? Possible. I'm not expecting that to be a priority. I think Microsoft's going to release Windows Lite. There'll be new device experiences. There'll be more tablet-esque, dual screen, foldables, all this kind of stuff. And I think the answer is going to be, you want a better tablet experience? Buy that device. And I don't think that's going to be like an FU to people. I think people are going to see these devices and be like, I kind of actually really would like to have that device. That hardware looks really immaculate. That seems to be a better. Don't forget, Microsoft is not infinite resources, and to go back and rework the shell for an aging operating system that's not built for tablets to make it tablet friendly seems to me like if they were bored and had nothing else to do and money to burn, sure, but why, right? Yeah, I mean, technically it is possible with the whole universal shell thing, but I don't think it's on their to-do list because it just doesn't make sense. Most people running Windows 10 aren't running it on tablets, and even if you have a Surface Pro or Surface Go, you're not using it as a tablet, and if you are, you're in the minority.
And someone brought this up recently. They're like, there's on the store a dearth of touch-friendly games, compared to like an iPad. Totally true, but it's also a chicken egg thing, right? There's also no hardware that's running in pure tablet mode. I was going through my office the other day and I found my Toshiba 8-inch tablet. I have a ThinkPad 8-inch tablet. Like there was a period where we did have like these 8-inch Windows tablets. They ran Atom processors. The Lenovo one actually did run a Core processor, I believe. But that was years ago, right? So there are no tablets anymore outside of like Surface and some 2-in-1s, but even there. So there's no incentive to make touch-friendly games, right? And don't forget the touch-friendly games on iOS come mostly from phone, and companies are just like, well, just blow it up and make it bigger for iPad, and it just works there. Microsoft doesn't have that luxury. So, but with Lite and these newer devices, there could be now incentive to make better touch-friendly games.
Will we start seeing other Windows Core OS devices other than Windows like laptops, including smart home devices and foldables? We will absolutely be seeing more Windows Core OS devices. HoloLens 2 is another Windows Core OS device, as is Surface Hub 2X. Those are two separate, different versions of Windows Core OS. Sure, we could see it on IoT. Well, in fact, I know for a fact there is a version of Windows Core OS for IoT, which would run on smart home devices, for example. And Windows Lite runs on foldables as well. So that's the version of Windows Core OS for foldables is Windows Lite.
Someone pointed out the Surface could have thinner bezels. Yeah, totally. HP and Microsoft need to, not so much Microsoft. I would actually say Surface laptops bezels they're good. Like I'm fine with them. I don't think they need to be thinner. If you want to make them thinner, I'll take it, but I'm not requesting it. Surface Pro's bezels, yeah, I wouldn't mind it being thinner. And HP needs to really just get on board with thin bezels because everybody's crushing them now in that area. I don't buy this. You need a bezel that's the thickness of your thumb in order to hold the device because everybody makes that argument and it just seems ludicrous to me. The iPad Pro doesn't do that. And it's funny, of all the problems the iPad Pro has, that's not one that people are listing. Yeah, it bends. That's a problem. But people aren't complaining that they're covering it up when they're holding it. So, yeah, absolutely thinner bezels. And what's cool about thinner bezels is you could keep the same size. So this could be a 12.5-inch size device, but you could actually put in like a 13-inch device or a 13-inch display. That little half-inch extra to me is huge, right? That makes a big difference. So yeah, I agree 100%. Let's do that.
Is 20H1 related to making Windows more consistent? Shouldn't Microsoft be encouraging their platform with UWP not using Electron? No, 20H1 isn't related to being more consistent. There are efforts to make things more consistent here and there, but there's no overall push to make everything consistent on legacy Windows 10. And no, Microsoft doesn't need to be encouraging their platform with UWP and not Electron. Like I already said in the podcast, if there is a developer out there who needs to build a Windows program that only Win32 can take advantage of it fully, then they should build a Win32 program, and Microsoft is happy with that. If the developer is trying to target as many platforms as once, not just Windows, it makes sense for them to build Electron. If a developer is trying to build a very powerful power user sort of program that taps into APIs that aren't documented and aren't available in UWP, then it makes sense to build a Win32 program. If they're building a very sort of universal light social app or something like Twitter or Facebook, then a UWP makes much more sense in those terms. It's entirely up to the developer. Microsoft is happy with either. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all.
X1 Carbon 7th generation is out. Plans for review. Yeah, absolutely. We always try to cover the X1 Carbons. I have not had contact with Lenovo about that device yet, nor have they sent it, obviously. It's probably a couple weeks, I imagine. I'll try to reach out to them. But yeah, I definitely want to review that. I own personally the X1 Carbon 6th generation silver version, which I've shared before. And I like that device a lot. Related, not related. Let's see. What do you think about the press conference at Xbox at E3? They missed the opportunity to take the lead against Sony PlayStation. It's two companies pre-announcing stuff, right? So who cares? I would say E3 2020 is going to be the big one to watch. That's going to be where details actually come out. So I thought they did fine. Zach, this is an interesting one for you too. Since Microsoft is supporting and actively participating in open source and due to the wildly success of Android, do you see Windows for consumers going open source as well?
This is a good question. I can see parts of Windows going open source.
That's how I see it too.
But I don't see all of Windows going open source.
The
Even
internal,
Windows
the core.
Core OS, even Windows Core OS, it's still based on the core of Windows, which is it's old and proprietary. And I don't think it's worth the effort of Microsoft combing through all of that code to make sure there's no naughty things or profanities or like unprofessional things in there that they wouldn't want seen by the public. Because when you code stuff, you can comment out things, and developers are like, this stupid thing here is ridiculous, I don't know why it's doing it this way. But there's you find that in code all the time. In fact, I believe there was a Windows 2000 source code leak a few years back, and in it there's just loads of developers at Microsoft swearing about why this thing is or isn't working. So yeah, they'd have to go through.
I want to find all the anti-Sinofsky stuff.
That bald person did this.
Yeah, I agree with Zach here. I don't think you'll ever see the core operating system, but if you listen to one or two podcasts ago, we talked about composable shell and this idea of shells being in the store as a possibility. And they could potentially open that up to OEM partners who they can make custom shells for their devices as unique experiences. And yeah, maybe down the road, then they build an SDK out and they allow that to be open source. It's clear that Microsoft is going down the open source road where, one, it makes sense, and two, they can do things. I'm not necessarily sure doing the whole. I don't forget. So Chrome OS is kind of open. I don't know. Is it open source? It kind of is. Kind of isn't.
So Chrome OS is based on Chromium OS, which is open source.
But what I've talked to partners who build their hardware, and their complaint is they can't change it. There's like a lot of restrictions on Chrome OS and what they can and can't do, including labels. Yeah. So it's not. That's why you don't see variation with Chrome OS a lot on these devices, and OEM partners are they're doing them, but they're not like enthusiastic necessarily about it either. So.
Oh, where's the question? What happened to the E2 processor that Microsoft was developing? That was a Microsoft research project, and as far as I'm aware, they're still sort of toying with the idea. I don't think they're planning to ship it in any hardware anytime soon. But it is. I don't think it was just a research project. It still is a research project. Them sort of toying with their own processors internally. I don't think they ever got it running Windows. I think it was like a Linux type thing. But who knows? I have heard rumors that they do want to ship a Surface running its own processor at some point, but obviously that's very far in the future.
Someone asked, should they? Let's see, why aren't they doing a true Surface gaming PC and kill the Surface Book? I don't see why you would need to kill the Surface Book. Surface Book seems like it's sort of the MacBook Pro version of a Surface, and it seems to be pretty popular and successcul.
They could do Surface could do like a Surface Tower PC, like the Mac Pro.
Yeah, I mean, this gets into the whole a gaming PC. So do you mean a desktop PC, or do you mean like a gaming laptop? The gaming laptop thing, sure, but it's not just. I mean, I said this before Surface Laptop came out, but Surface Laptop doesn't make sense in some ways, because Surface up to that point had been about sort of creating new device experiences, and Surface Laptop didn't do that. It just sort of, I would say, perfected the laptop experience. It still is, I think, one of the nicest laptops on the market. So I don't know what a Surface gaming laptop would necessarily bring outside of that precision. But like I said, they did that with Surface Laptop. So maybe they might. I don't know. I think they have to. It's a weird thing because they have to tread carefully, right? They can work with Xbox. They don't want to But now it's all blurring together. They could. They very well could. We haven't heard anything about that, but I don't know.
Will the Surface Pro line always run Windows 10, or will it switch to Windows Lite, Windows Core OS? So I don't know. The Surface Pro one, for me, it falls right down the middle. I know for a fact that they are testing Windows Lite on Surface Pro hardware internally, but whether or not they ship a Surface Pro that runs Windows Lite in the future, I don't know.
I don't think so. I think the name Pro preempts that.
I agree.
I think Pro is going to be like Windows 10 Pro. And then they'll have like a thinner, lighter device. Maybe when it folds, there'll be Windows Lights. And there'll be a clear differentiator. And for a lot of us, it'll be clear, hard choice. So, because there'll be some days you're going to want the Pro stuff, and other days you're going to want a Windows Lite experience.
Yeah, I think that's half the reason why Surface Go exists, is so they can have a Surface Pro form factor that runs Windows Lite.
Yeah, everybody says that, right? Everybody looks at Surface Go and be like, we don't know really what you guys are talking about, this Windows Lite thing, but it belongs on the Surface Go. Yeah, and, it's like everybody kind of gets that, right? And Surface Go should probably also be ARM, right?
Yeah.
ARM and Windows Lite, like, you make that device, it's, and thinner bezels, right? Just do all that, and that's how you make a better Surface Go.
Okay, one or two more questions, and then we are going to head off.
Do you think with Facebook's announcement, Microsoft will look into creating a digital currency too? No. Maybe they would, right? And they do have the cloud power, and like they could, but I barely follow that Facebook. I hate Facebook. I just do not. I mean, don't listen to me, but you should delete your Facebook. Sorry. Find a new way to talk to your friends and family. I get it. People use it for important things, but I find Facebook, in terms of threats of privacy, there's Facebook, then Google, Microsoft, and probably Apple. That's the way I would list it. But you should get rid of your Facebook.
I've got a couple of questions here. The first one, will machines running Windows Lite also run on ARM? Yes, there will be ARM-based Windows Lite devices. The other one is there going to be a way to flash Windows Lite on Surface Go? So there is a tool Microsoft uses internally where they can flash Windows Lite images onto the hardware, but I don't know if that will be released to the public. They could do that if they want users to test Windows Lite who don't want to have to go out and buy Windows Core OS, but I actually don't know if they will ship that as a public-facing thing.
Because it sounds risky.
Well, it'd be like flashing a Windows phone, like the old days of flashing Windows Phone or flashing a HoloLens. It would just be that, but I don't know.
But there is the risk that,
and you would have to wipe all your data.
Yeah, that's that you brick
because there's no direct. I believe there's no direct upgrade path. So if you're a normal user, no, you wouldn't be able to update to Windows Lite. But if you're a developer, maybe they might give you the option to flash the image that would wipe the device clean and give you the Windows Lite image.
I hope Surface Book to not use U series CPUs. I mean. They're using what? They're using the 45 watt. No, they're using the U series. That's right. So they're using U series paired with a really good GPU. I'm actually fine with that, but you can't have it all. Like, listen, I'm using the Blade 15 45 watt processor, 6-core beast, right? 9th generation Core i7 paired with an RTX 27 Max-Q. Here's your dream. You want that in the Surface Book, don't you? Make it a tablet, pop it off. Here's the thing. Battery life is, and my experience so far has been like 5 hours. It's just not good, right? I mean, you want all that power, but then you want to pop it off as the tablet. So it's like having a tablet with a 45 watt processor is problematic. Like I don't know. You can't have it all, right? It's hard to make a 45 watt chip and still get good battery life. Dell does it with the XPS 15. Dell also does it because they put in like a 97 watt hour battery. It's like literally just below the threshold of the legal requirements for going on an airplane. If it was any bigger, like you would have to check it in. So like that's how they make the XPS 15 get good battery life, right? And even then, it's still not amazing. So it's and the XPS 15 weighs like 4.5 pounds, right? So it's it doesn't. It's not even a convertible. I'm just saying there's still challenges here. I think when you go to the 10 nanometer for 45 watt, more opportunities open up to make something like that possible. But I don't think we're there yet.
Are Microsoft's leaks concerning Modern OS/Centaurus aimed at OEMs to reassure that it's coming soon since it's been delayed? No, I don't think so. If Microsoft wanted to, they could communicate Windows Lite stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking to Lenovo with the X1 foldable device there. I mean, I flat out went like, this is a Windows Lite device, right? And directly, their faces were like, it's running a Windows experience. They obviously wouldn't tell me, but they 100% know that when they're making that device, that this is part of this thing. So they're making it with Microsoft in mind, right? So they know about this stuff. It has something to do with supporting your OEMs. But they do allow their OEM partners to sort of get ahead of the story and garner some attention. Like Lenovo's taking a risk making that device. 3 years it's been in development for, right? So a lot of money went into that, a lot of research. As a reward, Microsoft's like, sure, all right, you want to get some attention now and get it out there. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Like it is a little bit, works both ways.
Yeah, Microsoft has channels where they can communicate with their partners in secret. There's meetings where Microsoft talks to partners and says, "Hey, here's the things we're working on. Here's Windows Live, etc., etc." And the public never know about it. They have ways of communicating with partners and announcing things that haven't been announced to the public yet. So no, the public leaks are not usually just to reassure partners. There's much more official ways of doing that behind the scenes.
I love the battery life on Surface Book 2 because of the U series. Yeah, I mean, I actually do think a U series combined with a GPU. That's why I like the MSI PS63. I think that's the name of it. It's a U series. It's a laptop, straight up laptop, but it has a U series processor with a 1050 Ti GPU in it. And you get to understand, like, people who need a GPU, like, whatever apps they're running, whether it's media or video or even video games, like those things really are GPU intensive. Like that's why you can actually run a U series Ultrabook, like a Blade Stealth, connected up to Thunderbolt 3 to an external GPU, and then you can go play Doom at like 90 frames per second, right? If you have like a 2070 or something like that, because your CPU is not the bottleneck, really. Like you're not going to get a lot of benefit from the CPU unless you're doing like number crunching and certain things. It's mostly the GPU that matters. So I actually like the pairing of U series with a powerful GPU. And so asked, does the Blade 15 get hot? Whoo, boy, does it get hot. Yes. It's got dual fans on it. I didn't do temperature readings on it, but I was playing a game on it the other day, and like, yeah, it's not a laptop once it gets that hot anymore. So yeah, these things get really toasty. Thermals are another big thing you got to take in consideration. Don't forget the way the Surface Book is designed is it's not typical.
Are we sure there's a October event this year? I'm relatively confident. There's definitely one in the plan, in the schedule for Microsoft. They definitely want to do one. Whether or not they actually do one remains to be seen. But yes, as of right now, the plan is to have an October event this year.
If Microsoft continues to expand on the Surface line, won't it hurt the relationships with their partners? Listen, none of them were happy about Surface Laptop. I can flat out tell you that. I talked to these companies. A lot of them were caught off guard. That they didn't know that, right, when they announced laptop. They were like, oh, really? And it's like what I said before. They expect Microsoft to make new device experiences. That one was weird. That said, you can't point to any data showing that the Surface Laptop is somehow displacing or hurting HP or Lenovo or Dell. For one, those companies are all doing, in my opinion, some of the best work they've ever done in laptops, making sometimes better instances of Surface Laptop, right? Huawei MateBook X Pro is a perfect example of that. Don't forget, and also Microsoft always prices their stuff too high. It's not too high. It's high though, right? They're really bargains. They let HP and Lenovo and Dell offer the bargains, right? And the stuff that they go on sale. So the original Surface Pro, the day it was announced, it was all like clips from all their OEM partners talk about how mad they were at Microsoft and how it was going to destroy their relationships. Here we are in 2019. None of that came true. So they add another one or two devices to this. No. I'd also argue that OEM partners are 100% fine with Microsoft sometimes taking the lead on this stuff. Like, oh, you want to make a $3,000 desktop touchscreen device for inking? Yeah, you do that and take the risk. We're going to sit back and watch what happens. Same with the foldable. Oh, you want to do foldable things? Okay, that sounds crazy. You can do that first, and if it does well, we'll come up with something too. So there's some benefit here where Microsoft takes the initial risk, and then their OEM partners reap the benefits. Case in point, the 2-in-1. Everybody laughed it off. Now everybody's making 2-in-1s. So there you go. You can thank Microsoft for taking the risk for that. Yeah.
Will Winlight target markets be just like computing, or will it scale up to professionals? Professionals can use Windows 10. Windows Lite will be for the same audience who run Chrome OS and iPad. I'm sure there will be So the end goal is to have Windows Core OS and maybe Windows Lite specifically, or maybe some other sort of more advanced flavor of it in the future, to replace sort of legacy Windows 10. But that's not anytime soon. That's like a multiple decade long journey. Windows 10 Pro for the most part will remain as the option for creatives and professionals who need to do specific, heavy lifting and all that kind of work. Windows Lite when it releases initially will be for consumers, students, people who just use computers for people in offices, for example, people who use it to browse the web, check email, music, etc., etc. If you're a Photoshop artist or somebody who edits films and movies in Premiere Pro, you probably shouldn't be using a Windows Lite device, at least not at first. Over time, perhaps, but not at first.
Yeah, it's like the same thing. Someone asked about prospects of ARM powering desktops. I would still say we're a little out from that. No reason they can't make a scale-up ARM to make it more powerful like the HCX and go beyond that. We do see all-in-one desktops that are powered by U-series processors, right? Mm-hmm. That's a thing, right? So, if you're in that class already you could make really thin all-in-ones that are basically just a display it would be no room for the processor, right? So I see it for that. But for people who are like, I'm going to build an AMD Ryzen with RTX 20, no, that's a different thing, right? So if that's what you mean by desktop, no. Is it plausible that there would be a Surface device as powerful as Surface Book, but without the whole tablet part? So as people point out, you just want a more powerful Surface laptop. We have heard, and history shows us, you have Surface Book came out 13.5 inch, and then they came out with Surface Book 2, and they came out with a bigger version of it. I don't see why they wouldn't contemplate making a Surface laptop 15 inch, for instance. I would love that device. That device, they could just keep it as a straight up Ultrabook, but they could throw in like an MX 150 or 250 GPU in there. Maybe a 1050 or what's it now, the 1650, I think it's replaced it. Yeah, that's a possibility that could happen. I would like to see them do that.
With Windows Lite being a mobile platform, will there be any messaging app? So I think you're mistaking the word mobile for smartphone. Windows Lite, while it technically can run on phone-type devices, not that there will be any. If you're buying a tablet or a laptop with Windows Lite, I doubt it will have a messaging app. Could be wrong, though. They could do what they do in Windows 10 and just have it in there anyway. But yeah, no, most Windows Lite devices won't be devices with the ability to make phone calls or text messages. You can use the Your Phone app for that. Right, I think that does it. We've been here for quite a while now. Thank you for tuning in, guys. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when the show is going live and whatnot. And ask us questions on Twitter. And if we like them, we'll do them on the podcast. And we'll answer them on Twitter as well, of course. But until then, goodbye.